the Countryside Podcasts with Chris Skinner.
It's a glorious morning on High Ash Farm. Spring has sprung, we're well into March, and we're in the mobile bird hide, aka Chris Skinner's farm truck. And in front of us, what a scene against the blue sky there.
Look at that, Matthew. That's absolutely glorious. We're sitting on the edge of Caister St Edmund's Park, Caister Church just on our left, and this kind of epitomises the Norfolk countryside at this time of the year, at the farm rookery. And it's amazing. It's thriving is the only word to call this scene in front of us. Started off with about 20 years ago, 20 odd nests, and each year the numbers have built up, and we're now around about 150, 160 nests, and early March, which is where we are, is the time they rebuild last year's nests and start egg laying. And some of the females have already got eggs, and we can see the nests so clearly because they're early nest builders, early egg layers, and the trees are not yet in leaf, so we got a perfect picture of them in front of us, perhaps 30, 40 yards away, high up in ash trees and oak trees, which are also suitable. They'll nest in a whole variety of different tree species, but their favourite was elm, and this farm was absolutely peppered with elm trees all over and right through the late 60s and particularly the 1970s. Of course, we lost most of our elm trees with Dutch elm disease, and that meant the rooks had to change their normal nesting habitat. They're quite traditional because they'll often use the same rookery year after year after year. And there's one just come in with a huge stick, just landed halfway up the tree, and it's hopping across. Oh, it's building, it's just got a foundation nest. Can you see? Just about halfway down the tree, not as high as the other ones. And I was quite surprised. I wondered why it went there, and you can see the female is on the nest. She's been given a gift of a stick. In human terms, it's like taking your partner a brick, perhaps, for the house. And,
Well, it is quite a sight. I mean, all these black bird shapes at the very top of the trees. That nest, though, is further down, as you said. Is that a less favourable position?
Yeah, absolutely. There seems to be some sort of pecking order, and also rooks are rather notorious about thieving. In fact, the word rook means somebody who might sort of steal something from you. To rook somebody is to sort of rip them off, if you like, and that's where the word comes from, because I often come and just watch them from a distance with a pair of binoculars, and the behaviour that goes on when you've got the younger rooks, which will nest lower down in the trees. the older ones will come in and steal the sticks and put it in their own nest. They are quite amusing.
And they're constantly chattering to each other as well, aren't they, as we can hear?
It's one of those things, the knowledge that we have missing, because we can hear them. They have a whole variety of different sounds. I suppose a lot of people would, if you try to imitate it, it's a kind of caw sound, and that comes through because there are town names, village names all over the UK called Crawford, which means to crow, and also the names have come through into local villages around us. Rockland, for instance, is Rookland, and you kind of forget all this. So a lot of history, and often they would nest around churchyards as well, because they weren't disturbed. Oh, there's a fight going on.
Oh, there's lots of wings and fluttering. There's about 5 or 6 birds involved.
Yes, right. So what's happened is that's a low down nest, and some of the young ones, which are a bit inexperienced, and they've been given the kind of lower down nests, if you like, the less favourable spots. 6 or 7 adults came in from higher up and they're pillaging the nest, and if they don't like it, if you haven't behaved properly, you will have your own nest ripped to pieces and the twigs thrown on the ground.
Let's not forget, these birds are big old bruisers, aren't they?
Yes, there are 3 members, lowland crows, if you like, and it's quite difficult to distinguish for some people between them. But the rook is the kind of mid-sized one. Carrion crow is the larger one, but that's got a dull plumage and a square tail when it flies over the top of you. Rooks, the next one down. Carrion crow's about 19 inches from tip of beak to tip of tail. Rooks slightly smaller, about 18 inches, 18 and a half inches. That's in old money, if you like.
But that beak can do a lot of damage, I should think.
Well, apparently this long dagger-like beak is about 2.5, even 3 inches long, and just round where it joins the skull, it's pure white or greyish white, and it just looks like dry bone colour, and they use that beak. It's a long, sharp, dagger-like beak, probe into the soil, and really their main diet is soil invertebrates, worms and beetles, any grubs in the soil, and so there's some argument about rooks conferring some benefit to farmers by eating things like wireworm and leather jackets and things like that. So it does look pretty fearsome, but it's used not like a carrion crow, which is really much more of a solitary bird, and you'll obviously see them on the edge of roadsides sort of picking away at a rabbit carcass. Rooks don't generally do that. They're not true meat eaters like a carrion crow. And the jackdaw will sometimes... Oh, another bird just come in with a stick, just on the right of that very large tree in front of us, very proudly holding the stick. And I think it's going to... I think it's going to fly down to that immature nest, if you like to call it, a sort of quarter-built nest low down, and the lady rook is not on the nest. She's gone off to find a stick as well. Oh, he's coming right across the top of us.
You can see the branch or the twig.
Yeah,
there.
they're quite large.
Yeah.
And that's what they do.
There's another one.
Another one coming in with twigs. They lay the twigs in a fork in a branch and gradually build on that till you have quite a large platform, and then they'll put some dried grass in there, and the whole thing kind of gets cemented together a little bit, and that nest is being built immediately underneath another one.
Aren't they gambling, though, that the weather is going to behave and they're not going to get a storm? And I mean, they're very exposed up there, aren't they?
Just imagine what they're going through, because they can't predict the weather, although there is old farming adages that say if rooks build high up in the trees, it's going to be a wet summer, and low down, some people do it the other way around. And so lots of old adages, but you're completely right, hugely vulnerable, because like in October, before we get to the shortest day, we're into March now, same distance after the shortest day, but the days are getting longer and better. But March and October months where you can traditionally have quite high winds. And that was the beauty of elm trees. The canopy was so dense at the top that it would hold the nest together. But the ash, many of the ash here at High Ash Farm are suffering some degree of ash dieback disease, and the twigs can break off that help support that nest. There can be 2 to 3 kilos. You can see the one in the peak of the tree, that's quite a... it's 18 inches tall.
That's the king of the castle.
Absolutely, but that's also the most vulnerable one. And the trees are not in leaf yet. The ash will probably be one of the last trees, the native trees out in the UK countryside, to come into leaf. But lots of tradition that people call rooks the old village parson, because they're dressed in black, and often they have these baggy feathers around the tops of the legs, which carrion crows don't have, so it kind of looks like the village parson. And lots of old adages and rhymes. I love them all. One sort of describes the fate of corn at this time of the year. Remember, farmers used to sow most of their cereals in the spring months, and you'd go out to sow either with a corn drill or even earlier by hand. You'd fiddle the corn onto the fields, and the adage went like this: farmer went to sow, 1 for the rook, 1 for the crow, 1 to rot and 1 to grow. But the crow has sort of got the blame equal with the rook in that adage, and that's not true, because crows don't generally eat the grain, but rooks will probe in, and they are particularly fond with some modern farming practices where you grow maize in the field, and maize is like manna from heaven for them. But they'll be laying. Some have laid eggs already, and I've been watching the females sitting on the nest, 4 to 5 sort of greenish, brownish speckled eggs with a sort of olivish green background, and they're sort of always busy. So it's absolutely lovely. And if a rookery gets deserted, the estate where the rookery is on is meant to fall into disrepair. So,
well, I'm relieved to see these birds thriving, and it's a spectacular sight.
It is.
And I think you're going to guide us through as we go through the weeks and months, aren't we?
Yes, because when the young hatch, it's also hugely amusing. Rook names kind of change, or the young rooks. You don't call them rooklets. You actually call them branches, because they'll get so fed up being in the nest. They're being fed at that point by both parents. Remember, this time of the year, once the female starts incubating, those open top nests with a grass top, no protection from heavy rain, no protection from the wind, or indeed hot sun beating down on them. So the male does all the work at bringing the food for her. He provisions her. She can just leave the nest briefly to a kind of toilet break, but she does all the incubating, and just love them to bits. So lots of jokes and things about have you been rooked lately, or bred any good rooks lately, if you go to the library. Sorry. Look at those, though. It just is such a beautiful sight. Common bird, still regarded as a bit of a pest, but to have them here, for me, just shows what biodiversity is. Modern farming, they're hugely appreciated, and they love these short pastures where the horses have been grazing right behind us. They can probe into the soil to catch worms and cockchafer grubs and all things like that they love to eat. Just love it. Look at that, Matthew.
The High Ash Rookery. I'll come to the other side of the farm, Chris. And we've just seen another rook there, but a lone rook.
Yes, it was on guard duty, Matthew, because this is a 5-acre bit of newly planted woodland, and right in the corner of the woodland I've secreted a bird hide, especially for yellowhammers, but the rooks have discovered the sort of free takeaway meal, and we might be spoilt with some real close-up views of rooks, but fingers crossed we might meet up with some of the farm's buntings. So,
and that's just the other side here, is it?
Yes, it's invisible, look. And we're standing on one of the permissive walks here at High Ash Farm. Bright sunshine, blue sky, fabulous view of Norwich and Norwich Cathedral poking out above the horizon. And the view from the farm here, the valleys in front of us, it's just stunning. But I'm going to go quiet for a moment, and we're going to creep into that hide. Come on. There we are, a sound insulated hide, very luxurious, carpeted out, and the most fabulous view of the farm. And we're sitting quite high up, about sort of 5 feet off the ground, and in front of us is a really large bale. It's 8 feet long, 4 feet by 4 feet on the ends, and on the top of that is some seed, and suspended above that are 3 bird feeders, not normal garden bird feeders, they're high ash style 6-inch diameter feeders, and the one on the left holds 20 kilos of grain, and there's 2 smaller ones which hold 10 kilos each. And all we've got to do now, it's a hard job, it's just to sit and wait for 10 minutes and just let everything calm back down. and already I can see some birds. It's the High Ash motto. At High Ash, the birds fly towards you, and I can see the hedge that stretches away into the distance in front of us. Birds are beginning to work their way up towards us. So, fingers crossed, we might have some of the farm buntings here. So, I'm going to go quiet for a minute, and we're sitting in pitch dark. One-way glass in front of us, 3 big panes of glass that we can see through, and we can see it's a bright sunny day, but everything that visits the hide on the other side of the glass can't see us.
Well, we've been enjoying the sights for the last 20 minutes or so. Very busy on the table in front of us here, and right now there are birds large and small.
Yes, Matthew, you are spoilt yet again. We haven't had to go hunting for bunting.
They come to us, as you say.
They're right in front of us, and we've got a whole selection. We've seen 3 buntings, 3 species of bunting, I should say. The first one to arrive was a corn bunting. That's a bit larger, and they're on the bale in front of us. The far left corner, you can see there's a bunting there with virtually no colour on it at all. It's just brown and streaky, and they're quite scarce now, corn buntings, but this is a good habitat for them. They've declined significantly. And then, strangely, in front of us, right in the centre of the bale, a bird patch you wouldn't associate with farmland. It's a reed bunting, and it's a male, and large black plumage on the head and a black bib as well coming down, and very streaky on the back. And to the left is a beautiful, beautiful corn bunting, a little bit larger, can you see? Quite a striking. It's the largest of the bunting species, which in the UK you can see about 5 buntings, all with these stout bills, look, for seed eating. One on your right, only, 24 inches from the glass, feeding on the little bird table that's attached to the hide. Very attractive birds, well camouflaged, and the females are lacking that black sort of plumage on the head because they're going to be incubating eggs quite shortly, as are the female yellowhammers. And while we were getting settled down, we did have a male yellowhammer arrive, and that's the most colourful. It's the yellowest bird in the UK, with the exception of the yellow wagtail, so it's number 2 for being yellow. And I'll get the camera here. Oh, beautiful corn bunting, just came back and flown away, and flying over the top of the hide at the moment, just eyeing us up. Those rooks, where we visited the rookery earlier, and they're just flying around, just checking these 2 humans that were seen in the locality of the hide have gone, and so it's safe for them to visit the hide as well.
The small birds have got plenty of cover. That's crucial for the sighting of this hide.
Yes.
And they're nipping in and out of the hedges as and when they see that there's a safe opportunity.
Yes, safety is crucial. A nice little flock just arriving. They all look like reed buntings because that hedge is in bright sunlight, and if there was a yellowhammer there, the hedge would look as though it's strewn with bunting, like for an Easter festival perhaps. And so they're all sort of slender birds, really, buntings. Occasionally in the UK we'll have snow buntings, particularly on the east coast, and they're almost purely white with some black on the wing as well.
I think I can see some yellow feathers.
Yes, some yellow feathers. Oh, yes, that's a female yellowhammer. Just a little bit of yellow on, and she's coming towards us. Very streaky plumage, stout bill, a little bit more slender than the other birds, the other bunting family. But the prize this morning would be to get you up close to one of the male yellowhammers, which are incredibly kind of lemon yellow. And I will... Oh, she's come on the... No, she's still sitting. I thought she'd just come off onto the bale for a second or two. Here she comes. You can see there's 2 white outer tail feathers, and the distinctive thing with the yellowhammers is they've all got, whether it's a male, a female, or the young. Can you see that chestnut rump just where the tail joins the body? it's bright, kind of almost rufous red colour, and that's a real good distinguishing field feature, we call it.
And all these birds are eating their fill. You've certainly provided a right royal feast, haven't you?
Yes, that's how you do it. And the hide works like this because there's a constant supply of food here, and food is crucial for them, because I've talked in the past about the hungry gap. Matthew, I'm sort of quivering with
breakfast and lunch.
I'm going to have to stop, because on my right-hand side, I've got a male yellow hammer. Let's just hope it's going to come on the bail. It's right sitting on the edge, and it's sort of 50% yellow.
I can see him.
You can just see him. He's got his back towards us, and fingers crossed it will come onto the table, and I'll have fulfilled my promise. But why they're anxious and why the hide is here is just simply because there's sparrowhawks in this area and kestrel, the buzzard flying over the top of them, and they dislike that. It's got a lovely little fork in the tail, sitting next to a reed bunting, a male reed bunting. So we've got male yellowhammer, male reed bunting. Come on, just hop off for us and sit on the bail in front of us.
They seem more timid, the yellowhammer.
Yes.
There we are.
Oh, wow. There you go, Gudgeon. I fulfilled my promise.
Well done. Oh, you can see ever so closely now. He's only a few feet away.
Yes. They are slender, and that stout bill, white outer tail feathers, and the head, just in the sunshine. Oh, I've done it.
Glinting yellow.
Yes, beautiful.
The detail of the plumage there.
And a red list species, so it's a red letter day for both of us. And
now he's eating his fill.
Yes, and right next, I think, to a female yellowhammer as well. Just hardly any yellow on her. And the hedge is full of reed buntings. A squirrel has just run across the scene, tried to spoil the show, but the yellowhammer is still there.
Oh, well done, Chris.
God, look
That's
at that.
brilliant.
Honestly, I can't believe it. That's made my day. I shall be smiling for the rest of the day. And give everybody an idea, that is, 6-7 feet from us. If we stood up and stood by the window, it would be about 3 feet. And I don't think anybody else in the UK this morning will be sitting that close. Right, if we stand up and just move in slow motion towards the one-way glass.
I've never done anything else but slow motion.
Oh, right. Oh, there's the female, just sitting on the hedge. Can you see her? Just a little bit of yellow on her head. There she is. And reed buntings, and a rook is eyeing us up from 20 yards away. Robin on the table, that's 24 inches from my face.
Just a reminder, this glass is one way, but we still have to be careful.
Yes, as long as we move slowly. And that was lovely. And there we are, I'm a foot from a grey squirrel. And you can see the buntings. Nearly all of them, the females, have this brown streaked plumage. It's a mixture of colours all mixed up together to give them that camouflage. And that's a younger male yellowhammer. He's not developed the same bright yellow plumage in their first year, but as the breeding season progresses, the tips of those feathers on the head wear down, and it exposes more and more yellow as each week now goes past. And there we are. What have we got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 reed buntings, and I'm standing now, I should say, about 18 inches. We've got 2 male yellowhammers. It's all happening. Going for the British record of excitement.
And I like the reed bunting as well. And we're right at the top of the hill above the lake here. Is that where the reed bunting would nest?
Possibly. They have started to nest in rape fields, and sadly, rape is one of those crops that harvested really early in the year. And so often the nests can be destroyed, but often in reed beds. Obviously, reed bunting, that's a traditional place. They will nest in hedges. They'll often nest close to the ground as well. All these ground nesting birds. Oh, and you've got a female chaffinch right next to your face. Yes, so sort of closely related to the finches in a kind of way, the buntings, but as I said, much more open country birds than the finches, like greenfinch, chaffinch. So you'll see them all in their different habitats, but this is the perfect habitat for the buntings here. And yeah, got this flock of well over 100 yellowhammers at the farm. It's extraordinary, but it's being persecuted each and every day by the local sparrow. I don't mind that. It's just natural predation. And if you've got a population that's good enough, remember, it's always the sort of prey species that control the predators, not the other way round. And I've got a dunnock here. People call them hedge sparrows, but they're completely unrelated. Look at that little beak. Tiny, thin, really an insect-eating beak, but because of this time of the year, that hungry gap's in full operation. Remember, plants and flowers have to come into flower first before they produce the seed. So when the seed supply is dried up, this is why you call it the hungry gap, and this is the portion of that year I'm filling in for them. Oh, Matthew, I could not have made this up, and we're finishing off with a corn bunting right in front of us, now joined by a male reed bunting, each end of the bale. Perfect.
That's half an hour well spent, isn't it?
You're telling me. Have a smile on my face for the rest of the day, I promise you. Perfect.
Well, we've travelled a couple of furlongs at least, I suppose, a bit more down to the bottom of the hill. And here's the aforementioned Chris Skinner Lake. And we're not here for reed bunting, actually, are we?
No, this would be a suitable habitat for them because there's 1,000 square metres of water here in front of us, and round the edge you can see I haven't cut it or anything, and there's some tall vegetation. There's brambles and nettles and lots of waterside plants grown up that from last year, and it's formed a really dense habitat, and reed bunting would actually love to nest in that site. So perfect. Though pair of goldfinches going across in front of us. Oh, lovely. Just see the wing bars illuminated in the sun. So we've still got this sunny morning. Beautiful. The water is still. There's hardly a breath of air.
It's brimming full, the lake here, and looks wonderfully healthy. And actually, Rat's going for a paddle.
Yes, he's going along. But if you noticed, when we arrived here, he's been going along the edge of this water very carefully and very slowly. And if we walk up and actually watch what he's doing, he's sniffing away at various clumps of grass along the edge here. And he's doing something very important. And occasionally, as we're standing out looking over the surface of the water, a fish will come up and take the odd fly off the top of the surface, and you'll see a little blip of water, and it's teeming with rudd in here, which is a species of fish that look rather like roach. They've got bright red fins, very attractive, very silvery as well. And of course, if you've got fish, it's a bit like hanging up a bird feeder in your garden, but in this case, the food is the fish, and the bird visiting the feeder is the otter. And I have got otters in the lake which visit here every night. They come all the way up from the River Taff, and right beside the lake here is a stream which flows all the way down, and it's like a motorway for them. So the otters will come up the stream, and they'll know there's a good source of food here that's easy to get. And how do I know there's otters here? Well, in my hand I've got a trail camera and a little stake and some tape to hold the camera on there. And over the next few nights, and for this Sunday's podcast coming, I will try and get some footage of the otter to prove the point. But if we'd watch Rat carefully, he was going along the edge here, sniffing away at various points. And this is one of the points where he stopped. And if we look here, we can see a pile of sort of greyish black material.
Could be mistaken for ashes.
It does look like that, doesn't it? And the white portion in the ashes are bones, the backbones of the fish, and it's come out, the otters excrement together with quite a strong smelling jelly, because each side of the otter's anus is a little gland that produces a scent, and it mixes that over the discarded remains of the fish, which passes through, and it's called a spraint. So, an interesting word, but it has got quite a distinctive smell, and if I pick some up, you can have a little smell. It's not too bad, actually.
No?
Not really obnoxious.
No.
But when we look carefully, can you see all the fish bones in it? The ribs and the
fine.
and it's quite coarse on my hand. It's actually quite sharp. Little bits of spine, the ribs there, all shining, and that all passes through.
And that's called spraint.
Spraint. S-P-E-R-A-I-N-T. Spraint. And that's one of the signs that tell us we've got an otter here. But
It's all over here, look.
Yes, exactly. And that's what Rat was doing. He was going along examining this smell, because otters are really like large weasels. In fact, some people in some parts of the UK call them water weasels. Members of the same mustelid family. Scientific name is lutra.
I think anglers have other names for them.
Yes, you're probably right, and I can see why. They're top predators. They don't have natural predators as such, but numbers got so low in the last, and we're being serenaded by a robin over in the hedge there, just singing away in the spring sunshine.
The ducks at High Ash Farm going in to roost for an evening. Hey everyone, it's Matthew here, and if you've been enjoying our countryside podcasts, we've got a small favour to ask.
Yes, Matthew. What we're going to do is to ask for a small donation to help run the podcast, and any surplus goes for conservation at High Ash Farm here. And so it's really important. We'd both love to keep the podcast going, and that duck agrees with me, I think.
Well, it's straightforward to donate. You can make a one-off donation or set up a small monthly contribution, and the address is highashfarm.com/podcast.
We're hugely grateful for any support. It means we can keep sharing the stories of the countryside, which I love doing each week, but it's that small amount of costs we need to cover. So thank you very much in advance.
Actually, otters were hunted very much like foxes with
Yes,
hounds.
Absolutely, you got otter hounds, and they're heavily persecuted. They're protected now, and everybody's interest had started growing in them, in the otter and their life history. And one particular enthusiast lived not far away, and I did meet him. His name was Philip Ware. He was right on the outskirts of Bungay, Ersham, and he founded the Otter Trust down there, and helped to get otters re-established over in the east. They'd almost been wiped out by hunting and shooting and trapping. And yes, they will eat trout. They will also eat frogs, toads, all sorts of things, anything in the water. But they're the kind of apex predator, if you like. But before the otter actually eats the fish completely, with the larger fish, it will sit on the bank. And I have managed to capture just a few seconds of the otter coming out right where we are, and then disappearing back into the water. But it does something special, because the scales are pretty well indigestible, and it will descale the fish. So if we move on another step or two, on my nighttime video, we can see lots more spraint there. We can see the otter coming out, and its bright eyes and that long brown lissom body, very sinuous, over a metre long with the male, the dog otter, and the female otter's called a bitch, and they will have a nest somewhere on the riverbank, perhaps down by the River Tass, and that's called a holt. That's where they bring the young up. But going back, look, on the ground here, the otter will descale the fish. So if I go down on my knees again, it's very damp, right on the edge of the water here. And can you see, these are all the fish scales.
These
Look.
sort of see-through white.
Yes, and they're so reflective. I did mention the sides of the rudd, which is the large fish, of which there are masses in this area of water. in sunlight, when the fish come up near the surface, they shine like a mirror, and my nighttime camera picks up all these little diamonds along the edge of the lake there, and that's the fish scales. But I don't mind it. It's all part of biodiversity, and it's what happens when you encourage one creature, then something else comes in, and you have this sort of pyramid, of which the otter in the aquatic world, if you like, is right at the top of that pyramid and has a rightful place to be there. And so no persecution or anything like that. I absolutely love seeing it, and it keeps all this in balance. So we don't have 10,000 fish. I might have 1,000 in here, but I'm happy with that. And there's this kind of ecological balance, which, if humans are out of the way, re-establishes itself, because many otters, sadly, they don't have a top predator as such, but cars, otters crossing roads. Unfortunately, it's a real sad thing. But beautiful, beautiful animals, very, very adept swimmers, and so they have sort of special ears which they can close up with a valve. Their nostrils close up, and they can stay underwater for 2, 3, even 4 minutes with a single dive. And if danger's about, they can swim up the river and surface a good quarter of a mile away on one breath. So beautiful mammals. They're very closely related to stoats, weasels, pine martins as well. They're all members of that family. Very lithe bodies. Otter can swim in really cold water. It's got quite coarse guard hairs on the outside of the body. Very long whiskers, which are very sensitive around the nose. And underneath that fur is some amazing fur. It's so dense that it repels, or water can't get to the skin. So it's almost like a diver's suit, if you like, to keep it dry underneath. And when the otter actually swims under the water, I've seen them in here, nearly always at night time, but if I put the torch on, you'll have this long trail of bubbles where the air is expelled, and the otter almost looks silver under the water because the air is trapped in the fur. So really top mammals to have. Really pleased to have them here. And this is the little post, and I am going to put the camera in now for tonight. There goes the post into the ground, and here we open the camera up, turn it on like that, and it should all come up on the screen, which it has done. Yep, we're ready to go. Shut the door, and then just tape it on the post like that and leave it. But before I actually do that and tape it on, I get some grass in my hand, pull the grass out like that, rub it on my hands like that, a little bit of otter spray in my hands as well, so I actually smell, would you believe it, like an otter.
Skinner aftershave.
Yes, and that means the camera isn't contaminated, because otters have an incredible sense of smell. They can kind of follow fish under the water.
Open the tailgate on the farm truck. So this is like your office desk, this is.
Yes, it's at the back tailgate of the truck, Matthew. I know how to live luxuriously.
Thank you to everyone who's donated to the podcast, monthly and annual one-off payments as well, and so many of you helping this podcast, and we're very touched by that, aren't we, Chris?
Yes, it's absolutely essential that we can kind of fund it to keep it going. It does have costs behind it, and any surplus, as I promise. Rat's chipping in as well. He's very appreciative of the help we get. Do you want me to... I'll lift him up, and he has to be part of the team, he says, and it all goes for conservation on the farm. And right next to us is one of the wildflower fields, the new one that has been funded by donations from our lovely sponsors.
Thanks for all the questions and also photographs. Chris Hanley's sent us some images from the Peak District. He says, watch this, I've heard of a murmuration of starlings, and these are gulls, a colony, a flock, a scavenging. a gathering of gulls in the night sky over an industrial estate. Nearby is a water treatment reservoir. Apparently they do this each night. Is it a murmuration thing, or do you think a piece of machinery spooks them at a certain time?
No, I have seen this several times. Lots of bird species do it. The rooks that we looked at earlier in the programme at roosting time, when they're not nesting, they do the same thing. They kind of cavort about the gathering of rooks, and then there's many gull species will do it, and a whole congregation of gulls like that has a particular name. It's called a dread. They've got a peculiar name, and they will often then descend into reed beds or beside water to spend the night there. But many bird species will do the same thing at dusk, just as it's roosting time. It is slightly communal as well at certain times of the year, so over the next few weeks you'll find that behaviour will completely stop.
Heather Hurt in the Isle of Man. Hello, Chris. After listening to today's wonderful episode, I was reminded of this song, so I've sent you the lyrics. If you get the chance to listen to it, performed by Daphne's Flight, please do. It's hauntingly beautiful. I'll just give you the first verse here. Heed the voice in the wind, my child. Leave the field till the grass grows wild. Every blade is borrowed. Let the land lay fallow.
Yes, and I listened to the song, and what happened is, last week we were talking about orchids and the seed in the ground, which could have been there for decades and decades. We don't actually know how long. And the second verse is so emotive, and that's what triggered this email. I'll just read it. Down below the waste and weed, dormant lie forgotten seed, waiting for to have their head and sow again the ancient bed. Wow.
That sums it up very poetically.
Oh, perfectly, yes. Well done. And thank you for that. That's so moving. The way the song was actually sung is really beautiful and picks up that hidden treasure trove under the soil, which is this what we call the seed bank.
Questions, comments, emails, we love to get them. chris@highashfarm.com. And there's also the High Ash Farm Facebook site, which is the best place for photos and videos. And you just go to the Facebook, make sure you're sort of logged in there and look at it regularly, and you'll find some real delights.
Yes, we hope to have for this Sunday's podcast some yellowhammer footage, if you've never seen one. Stunningly beautiful birds, and that elusive otter right where we're standing beside the farm lake. So good luck with that, and my camera is up and running for tonight. Fingers crossed the otter will appear for us.